So in Game Manual Part 1, these are the things that you want to look at. The 9.0, that's a section, right? 9.2 is talks about the engineering portfolio, the requirements or recommendations, and portfolio requirements by award. And that's really important. You want to know what to put in your portfolio to make sure that you give yourselves objective, or give the judges objective evidence that you've qualified for each award. Engineering notebook is covered really quickly in the game manual. It basically says that it's an optional thing now. It used to be required. Now the portfolio is required, and the engineering notebook's optional. And then judging process, schedule, and team preparation. So I think Joe and I will talk about that. Quickly to kind of start off with after we go through this presentation. Then continuing Game Manual Part 1 is award categories, and they go Inspire Award, Think Award, Motivate Award, et cetera. They do all the awards. And so again, in those award categories, they tell you what information do you need to provide the judges to give them objective evidence that you qualify for that award. And then award definitions down here covers the definition of what various words mean that you might want to use to give that objective evidence. Like you say that you help start a team. They give you information of what it means to help start a team, because you might really have only mentored a team and not started a team, right? If you're talking about like starting an FLL team. Hosted an event, those kind of things. So we'll pull that up and go through that a little bit. And then here we get into the volunteer resources that we were talking about. You got the judge manual. I don't think we'll go too far into this because it's pretty long, but it's encouraged that you guys read it before your judging session. It talks about the engineering portfolio, and what it has in there is very similar to what's in Game Manual 9.2. What is unique in the volunteer resources that you won't find anywhere else is its final deliberations, how they go about selecting award candidates. Okay, and so we'll go into that. Okay, so
how many of you have been judged at FTC competition? You two back there. Nobody from DCS has been, none of you from DCS have been through this, right?
They're all first year.
Yeah, you're all first year. Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. That's cool. Got to start someplace. So.
Yep. So we'll go over all this. It'll be a lot of information, and this is what backs up what we're going to tell you. And so when you need to solidify it in your minds, go back over the information here. So where should we start, Joe?
Well, so what are some of the awards? If has anybody read Game Manual Part 1? Yeah.
Any of the awards are just being quiet. They turn in reports everything. So what are the awards, guys?
Inspire. Think. Yeah. What's that? Connect. Yeah. Good. Right. What's the top award? Inspire. Yeah.
Notice I'm scrolling away down here.
Yeah.
It'd be easier if I did this.
So do you know anything at this point about the process of judging? Has Mr. Braun talked to you about what's going to happen? Have you started, DCS, have you started working on your presentation? You got time, so what's that?
I think so. We're just working on the portfolio. Yes.
You're working on the portfolio, yeah, okay, good.
So the presentation is talking about is the law that we did the ISPE. So have you done a presentation? Yes. So it's exactly like we did the ISPE.
Okay.
So, as Mr. Suko and I have both been judges at state, Mr. Braun also, he and I were partnered at state one year in judging. And I did a couple of years at Worlds a while back, but and then I think my most recent judging experience was last year in Peoria at their qualifier, their league meet there. That was the most recent for me. But it hasn't changed much. There's been a few changes. Mr. Suko talked about how there was an engineering notebook, and those got to be, some teams, they limited you to 2 volumes, and it couldn't be any thicker than 3 inches. And some teams brought 2 volumes that were 3 inches thick. So they've kind of changed that now and gone to this engineering portfolio because, for one thing, the notebooks were just simply too much for the judges to try to go through. But there was a lot of good things in there. So what's you go to the tournament, you sign in, you're going to get a time to be at your judging presentation. And so when you go to your judging presentation, what are some of you guys have done this before? What are some of the things that you need to take to your judging presentation?
The robot.
Robot, yep. What else?
If you need to demonstrate the robot, like last year we brought game elements to show
Yeah.
how
You could take the robot in there. It's whatever's part of your presentation. Yeah.
What else? There's one really important thing you need to bring.
If you haven't turned it in already.
Huh?
your portfolio.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they don't let you turn it in now. You have to bring it with you.
Okay. Sometimes they used to collect them. Sometimes.
Yep.
When you registered.
They're reacting to privacy laws, so
Okay.
they have you bring it with you to the.
So only the judges see it. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, you have to bring your portfolio. Maybe we'll get to the point here. When we look at the criteria for the awards, virtually every single award says must have an engineering portfolio. So now if you happen to forget it and you're in there for your judging, they will probably let you turn it in later. But you have to have that portfolio. You should bring it to the judging session.
Yep.
They're also expecting kind of at this point 2 portfolios so that they can pass them around.
2 copies of the same thing.
Copies, identical copies.
Okay. I had not heard that. So,
A lot of teams aren't bringing them yet, but Jonathan is encouraging teams to bring 2 copies.
okay. I think there's a couple of other things you're going to take in there. Have you talked to, you have the judging feedback form someplace? Maybe go to that.
It is. Where am I at here? Is this? That's game materials. Game and choose materials. Nope. There you go. Volunteers. So what'd you feedback request form?
I think it's in the,
There you go.
yeah, there we go. So judging feedback form. If you want this to be filled out, you should take that into the room. And so, you complete the top portion as it talks about, and then so go on down through there. So, these are some of the things, some categories that if you give this form to the judges, they're going to rate you on those categories and you'll get those forms back. This is one thing that they've changed, not too long ago. They changed this and added this because they didn't used to give any feedback at all. But this is the feedback you get now. However, if you get feedback and it says exemplary in every category there, that doesn't necessarily mean you won the Inspire Award. And I don't know what you think, but
our team has not found the judging feedback form very informative.
Agreed.
You know, you get some, marks on there, but there's no comments to tell you why you were deficient in that area.
Right.
Or why you excelled in that area. So, I mean, FTC has always been about, the teams discovering their own process, their own, doing their own self-evaluation, right? And so I think that's why they're not putting a box on there and asking them for that information. Also because the judges are just burdened and they don't have time to give detailed feedback,
Right.
For every team that they see.
So I know some of you were, maybe all of you were in FLL, and there would be feedback. The forms would come back from FLL, and you'd get that feedback. And so this was kind of put in place, I think, as something similar. But it is certainly not the whole story by any means. In fact, it's kind of a sidelight, but it's one thing you should take in there. There's one other thing that needs to go in with you, at least one other thing, that's related specifically to an award. Does anybody know what award we're talking about? Yes. If your team, if you want to be considered for the control award, you have to take this filled out form, two-page filled out form with you and give it to the judges
Yep. So
in order to be considered.
Yep. So control award, teams must submit a control award submission form as a separate document. Okay. So what our team does is we have a little binder, kind of like Joe's binder right here, that has our engineering portfolio in it, and we stick the engineering feedback form and the control award form in the front pocket. And
Those are two separate things, the engineering portfolio and the control award submission. The engineering portfolio is limited to 16 pages.
16 pages, one of them is a cover.
Yeah, in total, control award is 2 pages.
Front and back, yeah.
Yeah, front and back. And it's not part of the 16. So it's a separate thing if you want to try for the control award. Okay, so you go in there with all the stuff, and you as a team, you have 5 minutes. You don't have to, but you have 5 minutes to give a presentation. And then the judges are going to have 5 minutes. You're going to be sitting with probably either 2 or 3 judges. And you're going to have, the judges will have, after your 5 minutes, the judges have 5 minutes to ask you questions. And to know what you might be asked, there is a list of sample questions. I think it's in the judge's manual.
Is in the judge's manual.
Yeah, and that you can look at. It kind of gives you a general idea of what they might ask. And then they'll usher you out of the room, and the judges get another 5 minutes to kind of mark that feedback sheet, for one. And more importantly, decide what awards they think your team should be considered for. And this is probably, to me, this is maybe the thing that teams don't understand of how that 10 minutes with that judge panel is so important. Because the way the process works is, at any given tournament, there's going to be there will be multiple judging panels. Anywhere from a few to, at a qualifier to a lot at Worlds. But there will be these judging panels, and they hear you. And then after all that, everybody's interviews are done, you guys go off and do the competition with your robot. The judges go off to a room, and one of the first things they do when they get back to that room is there's a judge advisor who's kind of overseeing the whole judging process. And the judge advisor says, okay, in each category, I need to know I need 2 teams from each panel for each category that should be considered for every award except the Inspire Award. We don't talk about the Inspire Award yet as judges. It's Think and Connect and so on. All the other ones, there's Promote and Compass, and we're not talking about those today because those are judged separately. But
and robot performances.
yeah, and robot performance is based simply on the field. So if you think that your team should be considered for the Think Award, for the Connect Award, for any and all of them, somehow in your presentation or in the questions that are asked, and they're not going to ask you a question, which award would you like us to consider your team for? But they're going to want to, you need to get across to them that we should be considered for these awards. And in order to get the Inspire Award, which is the top award, we don't talk about it, the judges don't talk about it right away because the Inspire Award is a team that's good in all areas, or a strong team in all areas. Specifically, they break the awards down into 3 categories. Think is a category by itself. If you don't have a strong engineering portfolio, you may not be considered for the Inspire Award. I don't mean, I should say you can't be considered, maybe. It's not that you may not, it's that they won't consider you for the Inspire Award if you don't have a strong engineering portfolio. So that's why that engineering portfolio that you're working on right now is so important. And then the other 2 categories go by initials. MCI, which stands for Machine, Creativity, and Innovation. And those are the Design, Innovate, and Control Awards. And then TA, Team Attributes, I think is what that stands for. Yep. But they're the...
I'm going to pull up the charts because you're getting into the...
Yeah. They are the, TA is Connect and Motivate.
Somewhere down here. There we go. So in this example, this is the judge's manual, right? 101, 100, these are fictitious team numbers. Okay, and so here you can see what Joe was talking about. Inspire is not being talked about, but teams are getting nominated for the Think, Connect, Innovate, Control, Motivate, and Design. And as we go down, they start looking at these team nominations in different ways to help start filtering things out. Notice that Inspire is not even on this list here right now. So this is how they're just sorting the data a little bit differently. And then they're seeing, where they are in there with the MCI versus the TA categories. And so here they're starting to get into the point where Team 100 is the second pick for the engineering portfolio, first pick in one of the MCI categories for design, and then first pick in TA, right? And so now here they've gone through, they took this information and said, okay, who's our strongest teams? Which teams have been nominated for the most things at the highest level, right? And they picked out team 100, 105, 101. You can tell, right? Because they got the most things filled out there, right? So they filtered it down to that. Then they come along here and sorry, I take that back. Here's where they decided the Inspire Award. So the Inspire Award was given to Team 100 because they had, it's easier to look at to me if I go up here, because they were number one, and number two. There was no one else that had that, if it was a golf score, there was no one that had that low of a score with that many nominations. And so then at this point now they've decided Inspire Award, and they're starting to look at the other ones.
So another factor which is showing up in here is that, okay, they said that the Inspire, and this is at the end of the day, this is what the judges are doing very late in the day, trying to meet the timeline before all the matches are done to get this done. But they picked Inspire, and we've got share the wealth. I forget, that's not the term that they use, but try to reward more teams. So although Team 100 was number one in Connect, they won't get the Connect Award. And you say, well, why not? They were the best team. Well, it's because they got the Inspire Award, and we want to recognize some other teams. This is a lot about recognizing. The judges want to recognize you for the good work that you've done, and that spills over into this. That making sure we can recognize more teams is basically what it amounts to. But again, going back to that 5 minutes presentation and 5 minutes of questions, if those judges, two or three judges, don't think after, they'll look at your engineering portfolio, for example, after you leave probably, because they're trying to engage with you and listen to you during the first 10 minutes. If they look at it and they don't think that you deserve, that you should be considered, and for the Think Award, then when they go back to the room to start deliberations, your number won't be written down out of those initial deliberations. And then what happens is the judges get rearranged into panels, and one of them is for Think. There's a panel for Think, Connect, Innovate, Control, Motivate, and Design. Usually separate panels for each one that's made up of 3 or 4 approximately judges. And the ones that are doing Think, they're only going to look at the ones that the interviewing judges recommended be considered. And it's highly unlikely, I've never seen it happen, where another team that didn't get recommended coming out of the interview sessions got thrown onto the list to be considered.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Nominations.
Yeah. So it's, again, that's why the time that you put into that interview session, into getting everything down, to getting it down to a good presentation is really important.
Yep. And your goal should be providing that objective evidence that you qualified for each award.
When are we supposed to be done?
We're supposed to take 20 minutes, and we started at 9.
20 minutes?
We're going way over, aren't we?
Okay. All right.
So I just want to take a step back too. So
Yes.
Joe's covered really well. Go to the judging room. What you do in that judging room matters for you to get on the list, right? And then that list starts to get filtered. And then, Cassie's talking about pit interviews and what to put in your pit to do a good pit interview. And they use the filtered list here to figure out who they need to go talk to, right? When they need more information to try to decide which one of these teams is, to rank these teams for the Control Award, they're going to go to your pit and do pit interviews. And so when you start seeing judges coming to your pit, that's a good thing, and you need to do a good job there too. Cassie's going to cover more of that,
Yeah.
but
And
that's what's going on.
she'll probably say you always need somebody in your pit. You do. In Illinois, at state, the judges wear red. And at meets, They usually have red vests.
Yeah.
So, or at qualifiers, they have red vests. So if you see those guys coming around, you want to, and it's best to have somebody at your pit who can answer the questions. But it's okay to, if judges come and you know that the right person is somebody who's out running in a match, it's okay to say, I can try to help you, but really the best person for you, our programmer, if they come to talk about control award, our main programmer is also our coach and they're running in a match right now, or they're in the queue. Would it be all right, if you came back? That's okay to say that. You don't have to try to answer questions about programming that you don't know anything about. So.
All right. It's good to try to have all your team members adept enough to give some kind of answer, but what Joe said is absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you can give him some kind of answer, say that this team member can give you more information if you would like to come back. That's always good. Okay, so let's go over ward definitions real quick. So here's where we talked about ward definitions, right? They're giving the definition of started here. They started a team if they met one of the following requirements. They funded a team, they made a team aware of first the program and helped the team with the official registration process, as well as these, right? So it gives you clear definitions of what started means. So if you say, we helped start an FLL team or another FTC team, you better meet those requirements. And then they give you lesser ones. Here's mentored, right? And there's the definitions for mentoring, what mentoring means. Here's assisted, right? And there's the bullet points. Provided published resources, yeah, that's part of assisted. Ran, right? Did you run an event? Like if you versus hosted. So like our team, we got to look and see what the definition. We either hosted or we ran an FLL qualifier. So
it's important to try and use the right word, like in your engineering portfolio. Like, at DCS last week, there was a meet, and what exactly was you guys' role with respect to that? You're probably going to cover that in your engineering portfolio. It's important to try and use the correct word, in your presentation to the judges. They're going to, if you get nominated and they come talk to you in the pits, they're going to check up on you. They're going to try and make sure that you understood the definition of the word as you used it, in the way that first wants you to do it.
Yep. And then similarly with award descriptions. So I'm going to skip past Inspire Award, but Think Award. Require criteria for the Think Award. So this is in Game Manual Part 1, and it's in this award descriptions under the volunteer. But it gives you clear criteria. Your team must show respect, yes, for everyone. Must submit an engineering portfolio. That's all the way down the list. Every single one of them says must submit an engineering portfolio. And then engineering portfolio must have engineering content, right? Must provide examples and show how a team has clear understanding of the engineering design process, right? So that's what they're talking about. Every single one of these awards has these criteria, and there's required, and then they're strongly suggested usually.
So that was an interesting one because that's about the engineering portfolio. And to get the Think Award, you have to have very strong engineering content in your engineering portfolio.
Yep.
But as you go down through some of these other awards, there are other aspects like under Connect.
Is that Connect there? Sorry, I went too fast. Yeah, that's Connect.
Yeah, that it says engineering portfolio must include a summary of how the team acquired new mentors or acquired new knowledge. This bullet right here. So that wasn't required in the portfolio for the Think Award, but in order to be considered, or win the Connect Award, that has to be in the portfolio. So you got to really understand all those definitions.
Yep. The one I like is the not the Design Award, but the Innovate Award.
It's higher up now.
Oh, was it higher? I missed it.
They moved design.
Innovate. Control Award.
Higher.
Innovate Award.
Yeah.
robot subassembly must be creative, elegant, and unique to design. Creative components must be stable, robust, and work reliably most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So,
So Joe and I think you and the Joes were together and I was with someone else.
Yeah.
And you guys were doing design and I was doing innovate or vice versa, one of the two.
yeah.
And we
Yeah.
were trying to nominate the same teams.
And the judges, you guys, the judges do training, but a lot of them are busy people. So a lot of them are kind of learning on the fly that day too. Coaches usually make good judges because they know this stuff. Well, yeah, you do, particularly after you've judged. But, and then, but sometimes there's some disagreements. The difference between connect and motivate. Connect is engaging with the engineering, the STEM community. Motivate is outside the STEM community.
Yep.
And
But the thing we're here trying to impress upon you, though, is to focus in on what those required criteria are, and then try to figure out how to showcase your team, how your team has met those criteria the best you can in your portfolio, your judging scripts, what you present to the judges, and your pit designs.
And this is not, like a standardized test. This is not, you're going to get this, here's the score you got, at the end of the day, this is still a subjective process. We talked a lot about, trying to impress on those judges at the very beginning, in your interview session. But if for some reason, depending on the judges you get, it may or may not work in any given event. And it's just, kind of the way it goes. But, you guys have done great work. And what we want to hear about is your great work. And
So that's about all I wanted to cover. What about you, Joe?
yeah.
You guys got any questions? Kind of look like deer caught in the headlights.
Those of you that have done this before a few times, any comments? I guess I'm sure you'll do this, but really everybody, like in your judging presentation, everybody should talk. It's not good to have just one person. So even if you're not inclined to talk in that kind of a setting, you need to do something. And then it's a good thing to anticipate the questions that you're going to get and at least know who is going to answer what kind of question, and not have just one person answering all the questions. So.
Yep. And kind of with everything, practice makes perfect. Practice answering questions. Find people to give the list of questions that's in that judging manual. Get that list of questions to parents, teachers, whatever. Have them come in and do a full, judging session, multiple full judging sessions with your parents or whoever you have to assist you. Have them ask you those questions and practice giving answers.
And, to the extent that you have time, don't be afraid to share your struggles as a team, problems that you had either, gelling as a team or with your robot, and then how you fixed them, what you did to resolve those problems. I mean, that's another good thing to talk about. So.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I'm Cassie, that's Owen, and we're going to be talking about pit judging. And I think that pit judging is super important just because, nobody really talks about it that much, or nobody really prepares for it that much. So yeah, I wanted to cover that today. So let's get started. So first of all, what is pit judging? How many of you guys have done FTC before this? Is this your first year? For all of you guys? Okay, that's awesome. That's great. We're going to learn a lot. What?
At the door.
Oh, yeah, sure, 1 second. So yeah, we have a lot to learn then. So basically, you guys learned about how the judging process works in the previous room. And so basically what you need to know now is that after they you do your speeches or you do your presentation, Then they talk about, oh, who is good for this award. Then they go into the pits and they talk to teams in the pits, right? So this is like what that is. So, yeah, again, after traditional judging is over, judges meet to discuss which team stood out in each award category. And after this meeting, groups of judges enter the pit area to question each team that is up for each award. And so they can ask more questions about your presentation that they didn't get to ask whenever they're in the room. They can see your robot closer. They can observe you to see if you use gracious professionalism with your teammate and with other teams. And overall, they can just learn more so they can advocate for you in the next round of judging. So this is a quick one. I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's kind of just common knowledge at a certain point, but have good etiquette whenever you're in your pits because people will be watching you. There will be judges in there whenever, especially, it should be always, but whenever the judges come out, you should immediately go, I need to get on my best behavior right now because I'm being watched, I'm being judged right now. So act professional. Treat people with graciousness, treat people with professionalism, act like a good, teammate, that sort of thing. Keep the pit clean. Act like, don't be lazy. I've seen people sleep in their pits. I've seen people roughhouse in their pits. I've seen people do a kind of stupid stuff in their pits. So just avoid that because that makes you look less appealing to a judge, and they will not hesitate to take awards away from you if you are acting properly in your pits. And yeah, also, your pit is not just a place for you to be observed, but for you to observe others. Take every opportunity that you can. If you're sitting there feeling bored, get up and go to your neighbor and talk to them and learn from them because there's so much that you can take away from the people around you. So pit design is basically like you have your pit. It's like a 10 by 10 by 10 space, and you can use it however you want. So the main uses for your pit are you work on your robot between matches, you take it in, you fix everything up that broke in the match, you talk strategy with other teams, and most importantly, you talk to judges. They come and they talk to you while you're in the pits. And so there's a lot of different functions for your pit, and so basically pit design is kind of finding a balance between all of the purposes for your pit and kind of making it functional for every single aspect that you might use in your pit, you know what I mean? So we kind of try to strike a balance between, first of all, functionality, like making it a place where you can work on your robot, but also making it a place that's informative, where people can come and learn about what you're doing, and also attractive, so people can be excited and interested by your team and that sort of thing. And so, you might be thinking, why does, putting all this effort into this extravagant pit design, why does that matter for me? And so, basically, this can completely level up your experience with pit judging. If you make your pit informative, you can show your designs and your accomplishments and your programs and everything more effectively to judges. You can show them what's not in your portfolio, what's not in your presentation. You can show them things that they wouldn't have known beforehand. You can provide visual aids, physical parts are really awesome, and you can utilize that in your pits. And you also can show other teams what your team has done. They're not in there with you during your presentation. They probably, most likely, aren't reading your portfolio. So if another team comes up to you and says, hey, what did you do this season? You have something to say to them. And also, making a pit that looks nice is also really fun. It can bring in judges. It can bring in parents. It can bring in other teams and be that conversation starter for you and the other people in your area. And also just, make your team memorable, it'll be that thing that they can say, oh, you're the team that has this and this and this in their pit. I remember you. You know what I mean? Which is always important. So pit design fits right in with your other forms of judging because pit judging is just an extension of all the other forms of judging. So in with your portfolio, in with your presentation. And so we kind of try to use our pit design to fill in all the gaps that are left after the judges read our portfolio and after they hear our presentation. So in the pits, you have infinitely more time with the judges because in the judging rooms, you guys probably already talked about this, you have that 5-minute speech and then 10 minutes for questions, and then that's it to cover everything on your team. So whenever they come to the pits, that's when we really get to have that time to really talk to the judges and tell them about what you've made. And so what we kind of our thought process with this is make your presentation in your portfolio, like short and sweet, just get to the point. And then whenever they come to your pits, really utilize that time with them. And like, cause you have like, they'll stay as long as you talk to them. They want to leave, but you can make them stay if you really want to. So like 15 minutes rather than just 2 minutes on outreach, like that sort of thing. And so what we kind of say is like, tell the judges what you want them to ask you questions about. So they'll see in your portfolio, oh, you made your chassis. That's cool. There's not much information on it. I'm going to go and talk to them about that later. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, keep everything brief and then really use that time that you have in the pits to really talk to them about what you've made. So when it comes to your pit design, we try to make it informative, like I've said. Think of your pit design as a giant portfolio. And if you had like infinite pages in your portfolio, what all would you want to tell the judges? You know what I mean? Because being limited to 15 pages really limits your ability to spread information. So this is huge. It's 10 by 10 by 10. So you have lots of space to really talk about what you have made. And so showcase your iterations. So this is kind of like a model of what our pit design looked like last year. This isn't exactly what it was. Obviously, there's a lot more there than there is here, but this is kind of like an example for like it's the different sorts of things that we had on ours. So we introduce our team, we introduce our sponsors, we show the different strategies that we use throughout our season. We showcase our outreach and our accomplishments and like where we've been recognized for what we do. And also we showcase like physical iterations as well. So as you can see, like right here, you can see every iteration of our intake as it went on, which is really valuable to the judges because they want to see the progress that you've made throughout your season. And so we really like to utilize, like it says here, visuals, like pictures and models and charts, and especially physical parts, because your portfolio is 2D, it's flat, so they can't physically like touch and really get to look at what you've made. But in your pit, it's a real life place. So you get to show them the physical parts that you've made, which is really important because it gives them so much more understanding of what you've actually done. And yeah, so that is a Velcro board, like a felt board. And so we have Velcro dots, but you can do it any way that you want. That's just what worked for us. And so we liked that because we were able to remove things and show it to them, but whatever works for you. And so another just priorities, make things understandable, good fonts, good like sizes, so you can just be able to read and understand everything that you've made. And overall, your pit design is to help show the judges all the cool things that you've done. You have accomplished so much in your season, but if you don't tell them any of it, they're not going to know. So you have to be able to make that clear to them, because if not, there's no point in any of it. You know, you're not going to qualify for any awards for your design if you don't show off your design. You know what I mean? So also, the judges have a really hard job. They meet with like 20 or so teams every time. So it's good for them to have something to look at and also to be able to take pictures of, because then whenever they go back into the room, they can say, look at what I saw in the pits. You guys will not believe this. This is going to be really good for this award. You know what I mean? So information is really important. We also try to make our pit visually interesting. And so your team pit should show your team's personality. If you guys have a theme or something like that, or like, I don't know, just show off yourself. Our theme is Super Smash Bros. And like Nintendo and that sort of thing. So we really like lean into that and like make it so they can associate our name to our pit, to our shirts, to everything. It ties it all together and it really makes it like just like way more fun. You know what I mean? They really remember like whenever they see our stuff, it's like, oh, they're that team. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, it's memorable. Like people would come up to me like whenever we were like, in like judging, or like whenever we were like at like the fields or whatever, people would come up and say, oh my gosh, are you from that team that has like the giant cube and like the pipes on their thing? I'm like, yeah. So they're, oh, nice to meet you. And like, that's a great conversation starter and a great way to make yourself memorable to other teams and to the judges. The more practical one is just making your pit welcoming, like in the form of its like layout. We use sometimes like people like put like a table right here, like right where their pit starts, and it's kind of like, oh, I want to come in and talk to you, but this table is preventing me from doing that. So try to make the layout of your pit something that welcomes teams in rather than preventing them from being able to come in and talk to you or learn about you. And also, yeah, just like don't put all your information at the very back of your pit or that sort of thing. Anything that makes it so it's difficult to understand or difficult to approach you is not something that you want to do. Because you want people to feel comfortable in your pit and the judges to really enjoy being there so they can stay there and talk for even longer. Don't be afraid to use your space. You have a lot of vertical space. They're very strict about the 10 by 10, but they're not very strict about the vertical 10. They're not going to take a measuring tape and measure how tall your thing is. So our stuff is really tall. And so if that works for you, if that's something that you guys are interested in, use that vertical space, because with the 10 by 10, like flat space, they're pretty strict. Like one time we had something that went out into like the hallway next to our pit, and we got in trouble for that. So try to avoid breaking the rules, but also see how you can like figure out loopholes that you can spread more information about your team. Sparkle and colors and pretty lights are all things that bring people in. Right here on our pit design, we have these things like the corners. They like, it's not on, but it has like these like LED lights that run through it, and it like moved up and down. It was green and beautiful, and like people would come in and they'd say, "Wow, I love your guys' lights," and we'd be like, "Thanks," and they'd be like, look at our design, and they'd be like, "Oh, cool." And so kind of like the biggest thing is, make them come because it's pretty, because they're interested in what you have to, like looking at your pit, and then make them stay to teach them more about what you have to do. So I'd say when it comes to making an attractive pit, your biggest things are bringing people in and also making them remember you. You know what I mean? So that's both really important. So this is what our pit design looks like last year. You've seen a couple pictures of it so far. So we had a lot of space dedicated to outreach. We had 2 of these triangles. So overall, I think we had 2 sides dedicated to outreach out of the 6. And then we had, I think, 2 more sides dedicated to design. And then we had 1 for programming and design strategies, and then 1 to just introduce our team and our strategies that we use throughout our season. So, for design, we really prioritize those physical iterations. Being able to have things that people can look at and touch and hold is really important to us. Also, when it comes to outreach, the outreach section, it's less for the judges because I feel like they can comprehend like what is a demo like in their head if you just told them about it. But it's really helpful for us as a team to have that up there, because like, let's say they came to somebody who wasn't really involved with outreach and they said, "So what outreach did you guys do for your community?" They could say, "Oh, I don't know." And then they could just point to it, say, "Oh yeah, we did this and this and this." And it's very like clear for what you should talk about to the judges, which is going to be really helpful for you in the long run. And again, all of this is kind of just not only to help the judges understand, but to help you know, like have it right in front of you so you can be very clear with everything that you have done this year. These are some good examples that we saw at Worlds for informative pit design. So this one's really awesome. It's like a flow chart of all of like the experts that they use and stuff. And so like being able to show those stories like visually is really interesting. And like as you can see, like a lot of teams would have like these like floor to about like this tall posters that would just be jam-packed with information, and it would just be very clear, and like we were really impressed by these ones. Just very helpful to the judges, and also just really great at displaying the information. And you can have it in lots of different forms, like flow charts and just text and images and like photographs. Anything that you can use is going to be helpful to you. And then in regards to an attractive pit, here are some that we were really impressed by. Here's some examples of like leaning into a theme. They were race car themed, so their whole thing was like, oh, you're like at a pit stop, like that sort of thing, which is always fun and memorable. This also is theme based. At Worlds, there's a lot of like teams that very much associate themselves with the country that they're from. So this one was an Australia themed team, and so that was really cool. That team obviously is just really cool looking, and it like whenever I would walk by, I'd be like, wow, and I'd like want to like stop and like turn and like go and like look at it because it just had so much going on. It was very interesting to look at. And then one of my favorite examples was this team right here. They were from Korea, and that was like around the time that Squid Game came out, and so like they like really leaned into like the whole like Korean thing, and they like made their area like a Squid Game, and so they had like games that you could like play in front of their thing. They had like hopscotch and like the one where you like throw it on the floor and like try to see what color it's going to be and that sort of thing. And so people from the entire area would come just to play their games. And then that was a great way for them to get people to come to their pits and be able to really talk with them and interact with them. And it made them like very memorable too. Like, oh yeah, you know the team that has the hopscotch? Oh yeah, the Squid Game team. Of course I know that team. It's like anything to make yourself feel a little bit more accessible to people out there and also memorable to people out there. So yeah, that's all I have for my presentation. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so like I said, we kind of use our pit to kind of fill in the gaps with our portfolio. So if you look, here's our portfolio from last year. Everything is very brief. Like this is our outreach section. And like each thing has like one picture and like a really short blurb next to it. And it's just, yeah, just very quick and snappy. And like, it's good, but like I wish I could tell them more, you know what I mean? So then can you go back 2 slides? Here on our, oh my gosh, pit design, we had like 3 pictures each and like a giant like paragraph about each thing. And we were really able to elaborate on that, which I think is very valuable in regards to like spreading information. Cause like there's nothing here, you know what I mean? This is just like, but like whenever I'm in the pits, I can point to all these pictures and like talk for hours about it. And so that was very helpful to us. And also in regards to design, oh my gosh, like you can see everything here, but like this is not as comprehensive to me as this, like being able to like look at it, you know what I mean? And it kind of also like connects those dots too. So like if in another round of judging, they're looking at this thing, like, oh yeah, I saw that, I remember that, like that's awesome. And so I think that having those physical parts is definitely what we prioritize. But yeah, whatever your team wants to showcase is the most important thing. Trying to see. But yeah, would you guys say that, I guess you guys haven't ever done FTC before, but like, do you think you have a good understanding of like how everything works now a little bit better? That's good.
If you guys would like to look through any parts of our portfolio, it's right here. We focused last year on going for the Inspire Award, and that signaled a bit of a change in our philosophy of what we would have wanted to include and how much mainly we wanted to include of it. So last year, with that goal in mind, we kind of tried to split evenly amongst the portfolio the different sections like outreach and design and programming and strategy, because we were going for an award that encompassed all awards. So that was a different strategy than we used previously, where previously we'd pretty much been 80% design. But we still have a very large in-depth design section. We just kind of moved a lot of the in-depth explanations of how we made and developed our parts to our pit design. And that's what allowed us to actually go smaller and fit all of our design onto, let's see, 1, 2, 3 pages.
So when Owen says design, he's actually talking about think,
Okay.
not design.
That's great. Yes, it's true. I mean, this helps
You're talking about
them.
your engineering process, right?
Yeah, I guess I was talking about, we call it the design section. Yeah, I mean, this helps them understand our robot a little better for possibly the design award. But yes, this is also a big part of the Think Award, which is really about documenting your engineering design process.
So yeah, I think this year we're definitely going to prioritize that more. Last year, honestly, this isn't very focused around our design process. We talk about our design process a lot, just in a different section. And so I think this year I'm definitely going to try to prioritize more merging those two and kind of like seeing how they interact with each other. Okay, go ahead. One thing about documenting programming that was kind of tricky, or I guess interesting, or I just like, a thing about documenting programming is that like we definitely did not allot a lot of space to programming in that, which is kind of like not ideal. We wish we would have done more, but also there is the control award, which you guys have probably also talked about. So you can like, you have more space for that too. So that kind of also kind of dictates how we use our space in our portfolio, I guess. But yeah, yeah, Preston, do you have anything to say about anything? Yeah, so for this year, so last year, one thing that I wouldn't recommend is what we did last year. Mostly, okay, I would recommend it, but it was really annoying. So what we did last year to how we put everything up here is we printed it all out from like Word documents, and then we cut each thing out and laminated it, and then cut it out again, and then pasted it on this board, which turned out looking kind of interesting, like kind of like scrapbooky, I guess, but like it was way too much work than what it was worth, you know what I mean? I think that going into it, we didn't really plan very well, and so that was just the idea that we went with. We kind of went with it, but it made things a lot more difficult for us in the long run. So I would not really recommend doing this. I'd say what really helped us last year was definitely this area, but this could have looked a different way. And so this year, kind of inspired by our FLL team from last year, they did this. So basically, like, it's like a giant poster, and it all has, like, they did all of their organization on, like, digitally, you know what I mean? And so, and they printed it all out all in one go, which I think would be a lot easier in regards to like iterating upon it instead of having to write it all out and then print it out and then laminate it and then cut it out and then put the stickers on and then stick it on there. You can just go in your document online and then edit it there, which I think would definitely, that's what we're going to try to move towards this year. Our only concern with that was like, well, how are we going to include those actual like physical iterations? And so we're just going to try to allot space for that and either attach it to this thing or cut out a space for us to attach it to the board behind it. But yeah, I would say last year our thing serves its purpose, but I say it definitely could improve. One thing that I talked about a lot with the other group was it's kind of like exponential how important this pit design is. On the qualifier level, it really isn't that important. They ask a lot of questions about that. So we looked back at pictures and probably only like 2 or 3 teams really utilize a pit design, which is, and we didn't even really have much of this here. We only had like pictures of our team. It wasn't until state until we try to like make it like a documentation kind of thing too. And so I'd say, but once we hit state, this was like the thing that like was like the make or break. Like this is the reason that we went to Worlds kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like this is what set us over the edge and helped us in our judging. You know what I mean? Because as the competition gets stiffer, you have to make more and more ways that makes your team different, but also just like better. You know what I mean? Like that helps out your team more. And so I'd say as the competitions get more difficult, the more of a priority this is and the more of a like mandatory it is. You know what I mean? Like every team at Worlds had some form of pit design, either to make their pit look interesting or like informative, and ideally both, just because it was such like it's such an important thing whenever we were there in regards to like the judging stuff. It definitely like evolved as we went on to like this wasn't all in one go. You know what I mean? So I think that for us, at least this year, like what we did last year is like our goal, but we aren't like expecting that right away. And so I'd say definitely I think about it that way too. It's going to evolve with your team. And so, but yeah, I think that it definitely was the reason that we did so well, because again, like whenever you're in the pits, it's just so like nerve-wracking, like talking to the judges, especially like sometimes your programmer isn't there and you're like, I don't know what to say. Like, I have no idea. Like, you asked me about programming, I can't tell you anything about that. But having this here and saying, okay, I don't know a lot, so wait till he comes back. But this is what we did. This is what we did. This is what we did. And if you want to, you can look at this for a little bit, or like, you know, like we can talk about this more. But in like having like that like thing to fall back on and to really be able to like show what you've done is just like so helpful. Because, like, I don't know anything about design. I didn't design any of this stuff, but I can show you this. And you can look about this. You can look at this, and you can learn it, and that sort of thing. And it will kind of speak for itself at a certain point. You know what I mean? So that's really important, not only to help the judges understand what you've done, but to help you understand what you've done and to help you understand the things that are important to show. But, yeah, I think that we're done here. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, good. I think that we're ready to go.